All living things emit an eerie glow before they die. And after they die, the glow is gone. It is proven. This has been a theory many years for what they call Kirlian photography, but many called it pseudoscience because there are a lot of variables in these tests. But now, there is something called UPE imaging, which quantifies actual photon emissions related to metabolic processes. I believe it has to do with mitochondria, and it's more scientific and data-driven. Okay, so in the article, they talk about how it plays a key role in non-invasive health testing, but what they don't realize is this is like the coolest news of the century, and I'll tell you why. So just quickly, when they did this test, they realized that humans, as well as mice and plants, emit actual biophotons, and after they die, it goes way down, meaning that all of us really do have light, like an aura. It is undeniable, something that comes from all living things. This was the study. And when plants got injured, they emitted even brighter light when they were healing. So, in this book about plasma by Robert Temple, where he calls plasma the fourth state of matter intelligent, he talks about a book I have called The Way of Souls. It's a book from 1931, and it literally talks about odic/plasma-like souls of luminous fluid, which he catches after animals die. He basically catches the light emissions. The guy who wrote this book thinks it's bioplasma, which is known as our aura. Photons are emitted when there's an energy transfer in electrons. If you're seeing this on Instagram, go to YouTube to see the whole video. It's very interesting. So, in a plasma, when it's an ionized gas in science, photons, packets of light, are produced when electrons transition between energy levels. This is how neon signs are made. They're plasma. This is how the aurora borealis has its glow. There's an energy transfer. So, what you need to know about plasma right now is the paradigm of plasma is shifting. Not just in science, but in metaphysics, and biology and astrobiology, where science is being seen not only as a state of matter, but a behavior of all states of matter. Basically, across condensed matter physics, fusion research, quantum biology, and neuroscience, they're all uncovering plasma-like behaviors. Plasma is known as the fourth state of matter, but it might just be an essence behind all states of matter. An underlying field of intelligence and responsiveness that reveals itself when conditions change, like energy transfers. It is the fountain that all elements, all states of matter come from and go back to. It would explain simulation theory, but it would add meaning to it, because plasma is also the vehicle for consciousness and electromagnetic waves. Besides the point. So ionized behavior is not limited to stars. It is showing up in our bones, brains, chips, and even thoughts. Now it is showing up in this study, yet no one calls it a plasma because plasma physics is a small branch of physics. So when there's ionized behaviors in other branches, no one even knows enough about plasma to call it a plasma behavior. So from this test, from these scientists who are validating these things in labs, few things can be implied. One, ultra-weak photon emission, which they say in their article is most definitely happening. This is no longer metaphysical, speculative, not scientific. This is a real thing that happens across all living things. In metaphysics, you would just call this an aura, that everyone has an aura. And I am sure that is what they were capturing in Kirlian photography. They just weren't believed in the science community because they had to make their own machine to fucking prove it. Silly, but whatever. So if energy also can't be destroyed or created, this visible light, when we die, that disappears, that might just encapsulate our consciousness, where does it go? It does not die. There is an energy transfer. Just like photons with electrons, I think that electrons are kind of like wormholes. Just like an Einstein-Rosen bridge, I think all electrons are kind of like portals. And photons are the little bits of light in our 3D reality that come out of electrons. And then when there's an energy transfer in electrons, they go in the electron and then into this other realm that we visibly can't test or see right now. It's like fourth dimensional plasma realm, spirit realm of the collective unconscious, the fourth dimension. It is a real place where past, present, and future are all there together. And electrons are like mini proof of this. And when we die, our soul, our bioplasma, our literal plasmatic spaceship brings our consciousness back through that freaking wormhole into that fourth dimensional space with our consciousness to be born again, to go to other dimensions. I don't know. All I know is that this actually kind of makes sense. And I believe it in my heart, so I'm sharing it. And I think it will hit with you too. And science is going more and more in this direction. It really is. So it's almost like when this light that vanishes when we die, it just goes back through this wormhole when the energy transfers. And with that transfer, our consciousness inside this plasma layer that is disappearing goes back to this other realm, which means our consciousness really doesn't die. We might forget this lifetime, but I think that might be changeable as well. Maybe we can't stop physical death, but maybe we can stop conscious death of forgetting lifetimes. So what makes the case that I am saying so strongly that this is actually a bioplasma layer? That these biophotons, what do they exactly have to do with plasma? First things first, what is a photon versus a biophoton? A photon is a fundamental particle of light. It carries energy and it has no mass. It is emitted when an electron moves to a lower energy state, or when matter is heated and energized. Photons can be in the visible light spectrum, infrared, microwaves, ultraviolet, X-rays, gamma rays. Sorry, I had the wrong photo up. Here's the visible light spectrum and all the types of lights. And it's based on frequency, wavelength, whatever. A biophoton is a very low intensity photon emitted by living organisms. Typically, it is in the visible near infrared range of the light spectrum. Biophotons are only emitted or thought to be emitted from biological processes such as something called oxidative stress, metabolic reactions, and DNA activity. Are far lower than conventional light sources. That is just what we know about them in Sorry, I froze. That's just what we know about them in science. Now, in terms of plasma is the fourth state of matter. It contains ionized gas with free electrons, ions, and neutral particles. Or you can just call them positive ions. Plasma is formed when you apply sufficient energy to a gas. It strips its electrons from the atoms, and it creates a very high energy state. Lightning, stars, neon lights, plasma balls, the ones that you had at the store, those are examples of plasma. That is just the fourth state of matter, what we know in science. Bioplasma is a hypothetical conceptual plasma state within living systems composed of excited states, free electrons, ions, and other charged particles, generated by the same processes that they are saying are generated by biophotons that were most likely theoretical until very recently, when this article probably came out. So, where there are biophotons, there is probably bioplasma. Just like how photons are emitted when electrons change energy states, where there's plasma, there's photon emission, even if it's subtle, like in something they call dark plasma and cold plasma. So we can hypothesize where there's biophotons, there is a plasma reaction and electron reaction going on, a change of energy states, which also is why the plants have more biophotons when they're under stress, because their energy is working harder, which is emitting more biophotons, which is probably caused by this plasmatic state working higher energy. It is an inner aurora borealis event. Isn't this making sense? Understand me. Alas, I'm before my time with plasma, but the proof will be soon enough. And I have a book coming out about all these cool plasma things. The link is in my bio. So now we get to my case. Can an ultra-weak photon emission, a UPE, be also classified as a bioplasma? Yes, and here is why. Because the photons are being emitted by some type of energy transfer, meaning there's electron transitions going on that obviously aren't happening if the person's dead, means there's some type of plasma behavior happening. Just not the way we think about plasma, how it's in space or in our blood. Two different kinds. We usually associate it with this hot thing. And this is more of a low temperature, non-thermal plasma emission, which is a behavior but not a normal plasma. Bioplasma in this context would not be a traditional plasma, but it would be a plasma behavior. It would be a colder, more subtle plasma-like state that does not reach full ionization, but it still involves excited states. Electron dynamics capable of photon emission, which is obviously happening. Basically, I'm a bit early to this camp, but there's going to be new classifications in the future of plasma where their behaviors and their intermediate plasmas, because even cold plasmas can be like a kajillion degrees, like deep inside. It's hard to explain. Electron temperature is high in cold plasmas. The overall temperature remains low. They also have partial ionization. But this is something more subtle, arising from the body instead of an external energy input. It's plasma. I ran out of time.